Hello, everybody. Good morning. Hope everybody is doing well here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, I'm Billy. I think most of y'all know me. So it's good to have y'all on board here for County Clerk training today. Before we get started, I want to thank Katie for putting together these materials. She is the bomb, and she did a really, really good job of putting together today's presentation for you. She's going to march you through this. And we do have a few other folks here with you today. Miss Deborah Vaughn, who is the supervisor over our county clerk support group. And I know a lot of you have talked to Deborah before. Look at you. You're all fancy this morning, aren't you, Miss Deborah? And we can't hear a word you're saying because you're muted, and that's good.
Good morning to everybody. I just love Billy to death. Good morning to everybody.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, and we have Lisette on board here, Lisette Heron, who's a supervisor over what we call our Zendesk group or our email service. So you have probably corresponded with Lisette and her staff as well too. We're also very glad to have Dan Vinson, our boss, our Assistant Director for Taxpayer Services, on board, who will be helping us monitor chat today. And we have Jonathan and Josh from BIS here as well. So welcome to you guys too. So we
Hello, hello,
certainly,
good morning.
hey, good to hear from y'all. Thanks for coming today. We appreciate it. We are recording today's presentation. We'll put it on our website as well as a copy of the PowerPoint that Katie will go through as well. And if you have friends in the office that didn't attend during this recording session today or in live presentation, you'll want to tell them to come tomorrow and register with us so that they can get the same material. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Miss Katie, and I'll jump in every once in a while, and we'll be monitoring any questions that you have in the chat area. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Thank you, Billy, and thanks to all you who attended are attending this morning. As you all are well aware, when it comes to business tax and sales tax and the way we all work together, knowledge is power here. So this training and the presentation is kind of a high-level overview of business tax law, business tax portal, and the way the systems work together, and also some of the major sales tax issues that revolve around vehicles and boats and such. So then we'll go through this training, the official part, for about an hour, and then have some time to address any questions that you have during the second hour. And very glad that we got some folks from BIS here because, as we all know, we work so closely together between the Tennessee Department of Revenue and the clerks and BIS. Just a lot of cooks in the kitchen there, right? So happy to have you from BIS with us joining here today too. All right, well, without further ado, because we do have a lot of material to cover, I'm going to just dive in here to starting with a business tax overview. And again, so a lot of this is stuff you probably already know, but just to tie everything together and maybe you'll glean a few new things from it. Or you may be a new clerk. For example, I think we've got lots of new clerks and several I saw on the registration list to attend today and tomorrow. So a high-level overview here of business tax. What is it? It is a tax that is based on gross receipts of sales and services. The rate for this tax depends on the classification of the business and whether the business is a retailer or a wholesaler. There are some deductions and credits available to offset tax liability when the taxpayer goes to file the return. We're not going to get a whole lot into that today, but just so you know that there are some available. Registration for business tax. It's required for all entities that have a standard business license, and that's where we work together, right? It's also required for out-of-state businesses that have nexus in Tennessee. We've got one quick slide on that, but those out-of-state businesses are not going to register with you. They're not going to obtain a license because they don't have a physical presence, but they may be liable for business tax if they meet certain qualifications. Of course, contractors, that's a whole nother beast. We'll get into that. Even out-of-state contractors will get a license from you. If they meet certain qualifications, but there are some entities and services that are exempt. We'll dive into that in a little while. Filing for business tax, it is due on the 15th day of the fourth month following the fiscal year end. So when you're setting up your licenses in your system, that's where the fiscal year end comes into play, because that's going to determine when the taxpayer actually files for business tax. There's a minimum amount due for business tax. It's $22 per license, per location, per year. And this is interesting here. The business license expiration date is on the 15th of the month after the due date. So looking at due dates here, if a business has a fiscal year end of December, which most do, the 15th day of the fourth month falls on April 15th. So that's a big tax deadline in all of our minds, I know. That business license won't expire till May 15th in this example. A lot of taxpayers get confused by that, and they think that that's when their business tax filing is due, when that license expires. But really, that 30 days in between when the tax is due and when that license expires is kind of a period of time where our systems communicate, and um, it's still real important that they file on time, or else they're going to get some penalty and interest. So, okay.
Katie, I just want to comment on
Sure.
something just super quick. Um, this whole process is really important, and a lot of people don't understand it, like Katie said too. But there's a back end to this as well, and we're dealing with that right now. And it goes like this: we are answering lots of questions, Deborah's group, Lisette's group, others too in the call center, about delinquency assessments, that we send out. So when they don't file and pay, we do send out assessments. Now, just real quick, just to let everybody kind of in on that loop, we don't want them to pay the assessments. What we want them to do is to file the return and to pay what's due. Okay. Because, and Katie, you may touch on this here in just a little bit. This whole license thing and the whole thing about business tax portal and all that, if they pay an assessment, that is not going to get them a business license. They don't qualify for one. It won't show up on your reports, either on the state level or on the BIS level, because they don't qualify. They didn't file the return. You must file a return. You must pay your tax. That's what's important. So I just want to throw that out. Thanks, Katie. Sorry to bother you.
I'm glad that you did touch on that, because I don't go into detail on that here. So thank you for mentioning that, Billy. So this slide here gives you an overview of the way registration and licensing works based on gross sales. So you'll see on the left-hand side, gross sales. Now that is annual gross sales. For anyone making under 3,000, we consider that kind of a hobby, not yet qualifying. They don't need a business license, therefore they don't need business tax. They don't need to renew anything. Just make under 3,000, you're good to go. Between 3,000 and 10,000, a minimal business license would be required. No business tax, though. That minimal business license does not automatically get them a business tax account. They don't need to file. They'll just renew that minimal business license directly with you at the clerk's office every year if they need to. Over 10,000, this is where we come into play. They're going to obtain that standard business license from you at the clerk's office, and also maybe at the city office. At that point, that's what turns on that faucet, and them obtaining that standard license from you starts the business tax requirement. They'll get a letter from us. We've got an example of that here in a couple slides, saying, hey, you are on the hook for business tax now. To renew that standard business license, they will have to file and pay an annual business tax return to us, the Tennessee Department of Revenue. We then let you guys know that, and then you can issue that renewed license. Now, of course, there's special rules for contractors that don't really fall into into this model, and we'll get into that when we talk about contractors. This slide shows you what you probably are pretty well aware of already. Even you new clerks that have been diving in the past couple months probably understand this, but it's a graphic that just kind of shows you how we all work together, and all the different moving parts. You see there in the upper left side, the business will apply for a license. Now, assuming that it's a standard business license, that information is then shared by you through your system through a portal with our system. So I think all counties use BIS, cities kind of do their own thing, but all the counties use BIS. When you enter that new applicant's data into BIS, it gets shared with us, with our system. So then in turn, when the business files and pays on TNTAP or doesn't, fails to, as Billy was mentioning, um, we share that with you guys. So we're going to share with you, with your system through BIS and through our business tax portal, letting you know, hey, this person has filed and paid and they're good to go. If you don't see them there, there's an issue. So this is the slide about Nexus for out-of-state businesses, just to give you an idea here in case you ever get any questions. Again, these people are not going to file, are not going to register with you and obtain a license, but just so you know, out-of-state businesses that are organized or commercially domiciled here, own or use capital in Tennessee, or that have a bright line presence. You can read there what bright line presence is. The third bullet under bright line presence is an interesting one these days because the business has payroll of more than 50,000 or 25% of compensation paid here in Tennessee, then they would be, as long as they have $10,000 plus of uh, gross sales attributed in Tennessee, then they're going to be on the hook for business tax in Tennessee and will pay that state level tax. And of course, they will register directly with the Tennessee Department of Revenue. This is, you're not going to be able to read this registration letter because I know it's really small. You can, if you choose to, there's a way that you can kind of zoom in. If you want to see what that letter looks like, you can zoom in here. Of course, we'll be sharing this PowerPoint with you guys as well. But once a taxpayer obtains that standard business license in your office, or maybe they went to the city first, or maybe they came directly to us and registered for business tax, all of those things prompt the generation of this letter, which is called the Certificate of Registration for Business Tax. And basically what this letter is going to tell them is that they are registered for business tax. It also lets them know that if they have not yet obtained a license from you, that they will need to do so. So for those that may go to the city first or come directly to us first, they're going to get this letter and it's going to say in there, hey, you're going to need to visit your clerk to get a license if you have not done so already. And it lets them know that they're going to have to file. So we hope that you would maybe give them a quick little rundown when you hand them that license if they're coming into your office. Especially if you see them in person, just to let them know that they're going to have business tax, that they're going to be liable for business tax and be on the lookout for this letter. Maybe encourage them to go ahead and go to our website and get on TNTAP or call us with questions, just so that they know. I used to work in our collections division, and I cannot tell you how many how many businesses fell into collections with business tax because they didn't realize that when they got that license, that they were going to have to file business tax. Even though they got this letter and even though you may have told them, it just slips by certain people. So just so you know, they do get this letter from us as soon as our system knows that they've gotten that standard business license. This is what gets issued. Real quick too, I just wanted to mention to remind you all, if you've got questions as we're going through these slides, put them into the chat, and that the chat can be seen by everyone. There are certain ones that I'm not really keeping an eye on it while I'm going through the PowerPoint, but Billy, Deborah, Lisette, anyone, if you want to jump in and address a certain question that someone has, we can do that. And if not, we'll address them when we get to the end. But put your questions into the chat.
And so far, we have not received any. So
Okay,
I just put a
so
little message out there reminding people they could chat us
perfect.
up if they need to.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, just a few definitions here to make sure we're all on the same page that are relevant to business tax. What are gross sales? Basically, gross sales are all sales derived from products or services. A lot of people will say, well, I don't sell anything, I provide a service. Those count towards gross sales, of course, unless they're exempt. Um, all sales along with exemptions or deductions are reported on the business tax return by location. So a business that has multiple locations, they're going to put the gross sales for each location. They're going to file them under that location on their business tax return. Wholesaler and retailer, the rate that they pay is going to depend on whether they're a wholesaler or retailer. This is just in here as an FYI for you. When you register a business, they do not choose when they get that license. They don't have to choose whether they're a retailer or a wholesaler at that point. But when they go to file, they will choose whether they are a retailer or a wholesaler. A wholesaler, basically, if more than 50% of the taxable gross sales are wholesale sales, then they would choose that. And basically, that's just a sale to a retailer for resale, sales of materials that become part of a product that is for resale, or sales of goods to the government or governmental agency or to a nonprofit. Retailer simply is just anything that's not a wholesale sale, it's a retail sale. There was a law that passed this past General Assembly session that provides a certificate to taxpayers if they want one that states whether they're a retailer or a wholesaler. We put this in here with a link to the public chapter about that, just in case you get any questions about it, so you know that it's coming. It goes into effect in January of 2023. So if you get any customers asking you questions about a certificate or retail wholesale certificate, just so you know, that is a new thing, and send them to us if they've got any questions about it, or to our website, to this link.
Hey, Katie, just want to talk about that for just a quick second. Just to reiterate what Katie is saying, we do have the information on the website about those certificates, which will come out in January, probably even a little bit before that, and we'll put them out on to the different businesses, 10 tap sites and all that. If you have questions that come into you about it, tell them to contact us. Okay, they don't need to bother you as clerks about that, because you don't have any responsibility for it. You have plenty to do, lots and lots of stuff to do in your office. You can just tell them to call our call center at 615-253-0600, and we'll put that in the chat as well, and also to send us an email or whatever. But we don't want you to take the heat on that. It's an administrative thing that's in the law that allows these businesses to assert whether or not they're selling at a wholesale or a retail rate. And then that way it makes it easier for other businesses when they're doing business with them to know if those sales were at wholesale or retail. And that's all it comes down to. Okay. So thank you very much.
It'll help these businesses when it comes to audit purposes too, because the wholesale rate is a little bit lower than the retail rate. So just helps them prove why they're saying they're a wholesaler. All right, we're going to dive into classifications now. So I mentioned that business tax is based on their classification and whether they're a retailer or wholesaler. Well, this is very important for you because you're at the business license application level. A business is going to choose what classification they are, or maybe you're going to help them choose, right? So classifications are based on dominant business activity on a per location basis, because some businesses their dominant activity might be different at different locations, right? Dominant business activity is defined as the business activity that is the major and principal source of taxable gross sales. That doesn't necessarily mean 50% or more, because if a business sells lots of different things, they're all classified differently. It's going to be just which one is the biggest piece of the pie there, and have a graphic here in a few slides that'll kind of explain that a little bit better. But here on this next slide, this is going to be really small for you to see, I know, but if you want to zoom in here, or when you get the copy of this presentation, it might be like a little thing that you can save. This information is also on our website, and when we go over to our website for a little field trip here in a few minutes, I'll show you where you can easily find it. But this is just a basic breakdown of classifications. Class 1 over on the left-hand side in blue. There's 5 different subtypes for class 1. The law is very specific about most classifications, and then it's silent on other types of things, and we'll talk about what to do there. But for class 1, it's pretty specific. 1A, food and beer for home consumption, that's going to be your grocery stores, okay? 1B, lumber, building materials, tools, so on and so forth. 1C, hay, grain, feed, fertilizer. I'm not going to go through every single thing here, but just so you know, there's just very specific stuff listed. Class 2, some more specific items, specific TPP or tangible personal property. The law says if you're selling motor vehicles, clothing, except for custom clothing, home furnishing, prescription drugs, so on and so forth. It's very specific there. The other interesting thing about Class 2, you'll see there, it's the catch-all for any tangible personal property that's not specifically listed anywhere else. So a lot of stuff can fall into there because the law is silent on lots of different things. If you don't see whatever they're selling listed anywhere else in 1 or 3 or anywhere else, it's going to fall into 2. That's the catch-all for any tangible personal property that's not specifically listed anywhere else. Over on the right side in the pink area, that's Class 3, a big long list of other random specific tangible personal property, right? Very specific there. An example of something that would fall into a Class 2, this came up a few years ago when all these vape stores started popping up everywhere. Originally, the thought would be, and this makes sense, for sure makes sense in my brain, but then we kind of came up with a different plan on it. You would think vape store, tobacco product, right? Well, that's not the case. Vape, the actual product that's in one of the vapes is nicotine. It's not tobacco. Tobacco is a leaf, right? These vapes are a nicotine liquid. So we determined that because nicotine is not specifically listed anywhere else, it would fall into that catch-all area of Class 2. So just anything you don't see listed specifically somewhere else is a 2. But in addition, in Class 3, back over to the pink area, so all those specific items, and then also Class 3 is where all services fall, unless it's an exempt service, which we'll talk about next. Class 4, everyone's favorite, contractors constructing or improving real property, installing tangible personal property, providing exterminating services, selling livestock, receiving commissions from livestock. Class 5, there's 2 subtypes. There's A and B, industrial loan and thrift, natural gas marketers. Those are going to register directly with us. When we were doing presentations to the city clerks this past summer, came to our attention that some city clerks, it was just an old habit that at some point in time they were told to do this. They said, if you can't find anywhere else to put them in Class 5. Don't do that because Class 5 actually has a way higher rate that they pay. There's a higher what's it called, minimum payment that they have to make for business tax. So don't ever use Class 5. Those classes are going to register directly with us. If you have a question and a business doesn't fit into anywhere else, selling something that doesn't fit into anywhere else, again, put them in that catch-all. I see a question here from Tammy. Landscaping, that's a great question. Landscaping is actually a service. So the landscapers fall into Class 3. Now, some landscapers are now venturing into doing what's called hardscaping. Like if they're going to build something that is considered real property, which means it stays there, it can't be moved. So a lot of landscapers, I think, are dabbling in maybe building patios, pergolas, that kind of thing. If that were to be the case, those sales would be considered for constructing or improving real property. But again, it would depend on what they're doing what's their dominant activity. So if they're building those hard patios and pergolas, things like that, but also providing landscaping services, if they're services of landscaping were their dominant business activity, again, they're going to fall into a service, which is 3. Thanks for asking that, Tammy. That question does come up quite a bit. All right, so now we're going to talk about exempt services. So all services fall into Class 3 unless they are exempt. So keep in mind here what you're seeing listed, and I'm not going to specifically go through this whole list because time is of the essence here, but these are for the services provided by these businesses, accountants, architects, so on and so forth down the line here. Now, if any of these businesses also sell tangible personal property or other taxable services, they would still be on the hook for needing a license and paying business tax on those gross sales. An example there would be You see at the bottom of the list here is veterinary services. So veterinary services, the visit to the actual vet, that's an exempt service. But if the vet is also selling, has a little shop in the front in the lobby where they're selling pet food, leashes, pet toys, now those items are subject to business tax. So if it falls, if they make over 10,000 in gross sales of all those products and or services that are subject to business tax, they would need a license and would file business tax just for those products and or services that are not exempt. So another example of that is some medical offices now, dermatologist offices, for example, they're providing dermatology services, which are exempt, but if they're selling lotions and creams and stuff like that, then those items are subject to business tax. So there are a couple links here to show you that take you over to what's called the SIC manual, and you'll see under each bullet here the exempt services are falling into SIC major groups, and SIC stands for the Standard Industrial Classification. It's through OSHA. You're going to look up if you really have a question about whether a service is exempt, you can look in the SIC manual and see if it falls under a major group that is exempt. If you ever have a question about this, please email us or call us. If you can't find it in the SIC manual, whether it falls into one of these major groups or not, a question came up recently about um, uh, therapists, like a marriage counselor. Now, if they are a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, those do fall under SIC Major Group 80, which is, if you look down there under medical, dental, and allied health, so psychotherapists, psychologists do fall under that, but just licensed social workers are not in Major Group 80. They fall over in, I think it's Major Group 60 somewhere, some social services, something like that. So you may find the answer to your question about whether a service is exempt by going into that SIC manual. But when in doubt, feel free to call us or email us for sure about whether a service is exempt or not. So this is just a way to graphically show you how you're going to determine dominant sales. The little pie chart on the left, you see they do lots of different things. They sell gas at retail, tobacco, beer, candy, prepared food, non-prepared food. Looks a lot like a gas station, right? Well, as you can see, the biggest piece of the pie here at, don't have my glasses on, it looks like 31%, is the gas at retail. So that business model, you would classify them as a 1D. Bottom right-hand little chart, plants, random stuff, other tools, lumber, furniture, garden supplies, that looks like maybe Home Depot, right? And I just threw these numbers in here. It's not really what Home Depot would be, but you can see that the biggest piece of the pie here in orange would be tools and lumber. So therefore, you're going to classify that a business like that as a 1B. If a business is coming to you and they're just not sure yet what their dominant sales are going to be, when they're first getting their license, whatever they expect that to be is what they're going to register for. Now, that's something that can change year to year. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes about what happens if they want to change classifications. You or the taxpayer would need to contact us to do that, because businesses do that can fluctuate somewhat with certain types of businesses. Oh, contractors. So this is the chart that I made when I was going through training because I got so confused with contractors. Hopefully this can be helpful to you as well. It's handled a little differently whether they're in state or out of state. Under 3,000, let's look at in-state to start off with here. For under 3,000, again, just like we talked about, nothing needed, no license, they're not going to owe tax, not at the state level, which is also kind of the county level, or the city level, municipal. Between 3 and 10 in gross sales, they're going to need a minimal license from where they're based, their home. It's also referred to as their domicile. Again, because it's just a minimal license, they're not going to pay business tax. Okay, so in-state contractors making between 10 and 50,000. They're going to need a standard license from where their home base is, where they are based out of. They're going to owe the state level tax there and city tax, municipal level, if their home is within a municipality. Over 50 in gross sales. Of course, they're still going to need that home license, and they're going to need a license from where the job is, where they're doing over 50,000. That's also known as a deemed location if you're in our business tax manual. But they're going to pay the state level tax. Any receipts that are under 50 get reported back to their home base. So if you've got a contractor located in your county that is doing work in lots of other counties, and they may get a license here, maybe there, anything under 50 is going to get reported back on their return back to you. So you'll make the tax revenue from that. All that being said, if a contractor, sometimes they are required to get a license because of codes, for various other reasons. If they want a license from you, you sell them a license, and they'll be on the hook for business tax. So if they're coming into your county from somewhere else, maybe they're not doing $50,000 worth in your county, but they're required in order to pull a permit they're going to need a license from your county. Cool, great. Sell them that license, but that is going to put them on the hook for business tax for your county. Out-of-state contractors, really the key thing to know here is that over 50 in gross sales in your jurisdiction is going to require them to get a standard business license from you. They will have a different location ID for the city and county, and a big contractor that's doing lots of work in various jurisdictions is going to have a long list of locations on their business tax return. And there are a lot of contractors that just keep those open, and sometimes even if they're not doing any business in one of those jurisdictions, they'll just file the minimum just so that they don't have to go through relicensing every time. So that's contractors in a nutshell. I know it's pretty complicated, but hopefully that this chart can help you when it comes to training in your office. All right, now we're going to talk through some kind of special situations with business tax. So when selling only at a booth at an antique mall, a flea market, gun show, etc., they're not subject to business tax. You at the county or at the city level can impose a fee. I know a lot of jurisdictions do that. The key here is if they're selling only at a booth at an antique mall. Now, if they're also making sales um, at in other areas or online, then they may still be on the hook for business tax and need that license. So antique malls that have separate booths but one common register, the mall operator is subject to business tax on all receipts from that location. Transient vendors. Transient vendor is one that has no established location in Tennessee. They are excluded from business tax unless they were to meet other nexus requirements like we talked about. But again, at the local level, you can impose a fee for each 14-day period that they're licensed to sell their goods in your jurisdiction. Another special situation and very popular business is a food truck. So food trucks, when these came about several years ago, this was a big question. I think most people are getting the hang of it now, but food trucks must be licensed for business tax in the jurisdiction where they're based or domiciled. They can travel all around, but they're only going to have that one location. So if you've got a food truck that's based out of your jurisdiction, they're going to need a license from you. If you've got a food truck that's based in another jurisdiction, and even if they come into your county every day, as long as they drive back home at night or don't stay set up there longer than 180 days, they don't need a license from you. They're supposed to display their license when they're selling in any other jurisdictions, but unless they're staying, that last bullet down there, the bottom bullet, if they do remain in a fixed location outside of their jurisdiction for over 180 days, they'll need to obtain a license. So that doesn't mean coming to the same place every day. That means just staying parked. So if you've got a food truck from a surrounding county that's coming into your county and is staying parked in the same location or staying parked in your county for over 100 days without leaving, without going back to their home base, then they would need to obtain a license from your jurisdiction. Short-term rentals, STRs. Again, you'll see that 180 days there in the definition. It's defined as 180 consecutive days or less of vacation lodging. That can include a person's home. They're subject to business tax. Taxpayers who own short-term rentals only need one business license per jurisdiction. So if you've got a taxpayer that's got 5 different Airbnbs or short-term rentals in your jurisdiction, they just need one license. And if that's the case, if they do have multiple rentals in your jurisdiction, you'll just enter the address for one of them in when you're processing that license. For business tax, gross sales from all properties within a jurisdiction are reported on their return. And that includes even sales that are made through Airbnb, VRBO, etc. Those sales, those rental sales are going to be on their business tax return in your jurisdiction. We'll see the tax revenue from that. That's handled a little differently for occupancy tax, where those that are occupancy tax that's for rentals that are booked through Airbnb, VRBO, those marketplaces, short-term rental marketplaces, do remit occupancy tax for those properties. Not business tax, though. For business tax, the owner, the taxpayer, is on the hook for gross sales for short-term rental properties. All right, so we're going to dive in here to talk about excluded entities. I want to spend a little bit of time here because these slides go into some good detail about who business tax does not apply to. First off, manufacturers. They have to have an industrial machinery exemption for sales tax, and this can include quarries, granite, gravel, etc., primarily engaged in manufacturing, dental labs that make teeth from raw products, recyclers that turn recycled products into new products, like scrap metal dealers. Breweries, so this one's kind of interesting. Breweries are exempt if dominant sales, if dominant sales are retail and not manufacturing, then they are subject to business tax. But if the dominant sales are just through manufacturing, then they're excluded from business tax. Cabinet manufacturers building stock cabinets are exempt, but if they build custom cabinets, they would not be considered manufacturers and would be subject to business tax. All right, trucking companies excluded from business tax if they offer services to the public, also known as common carrier. Services rendered outside of that as a common carrier would be taxable, except if a carrier that has multiple contracts with several companies, then they would be considered a common carrier. Rideshare drivers and transportainment, they'll turn anything into a rideshare, into a, what do they call it? Like, I've seen crazy stuff in downtown Nashville where they ride around in it, transportainment, party wagons. Those are taxable. Those are not considered common carriers, even though they're offering a service to the public. Also exempt any person operating vending machines if they are opting to pay the gross receipts tax, which is another tax in state of Tennessee. If they pay that gross receipts tax, then they don't need business tax. Newspaper route carriers and newspaper peddlers are exempt from business tax. Institutions operating for religious or charitable purposes with respect to any profits that are earned from the sale of contributed items. 501c3 or 4 entities whose only taxable business activity during the tax period is conducted at the Tennessee State Fair or an affiliate. Sales of rental or real property that belongs to them. Now, that's not short-term rentals. That's a different thing. We're talking here about long-term rentals. So if you have a rental home that you lease out to people to live there, not just vacation rentals, that's not income that's subject to business tax. Radio and TV stations, publishers and printers of newspapers and other periodicals. All right, that kind of ends the excluded entities there. So. All right, very important here. how to close a business tax account. I cannot stress this enough. And if you get a chance when you're talking to the taxpayers, even when you're handing them that license, I know they're brand new and not thinking about closing at that point, but it is very important that they know that they've got to close with us. When businesses close, I know sometimes they come to you guys first and they say, hey, we're closing, we're good. And you say, okay, thanks for letting us know. And you may mark that in your business, in your BIS system, but they still need to do something with the Tennessee Department of Revenue. If they're closing all of their locations, the law says they're supposed to do that within 15 days, but they go into TIN-TAP. It's very simple. They close. It'll ask them when they go to say choose close your business. Are you closing all locations? Yes or no. If they're closing all of their locations, simple, they're just going to file a final return, pay what's due, and then be good to go. All right. If they're just closing one or some of their locations, again, they need to do that in TIN-TAP. If it's just one or some locations, they won't file right away. They'll go ahead and file for those locations when they file in April. And the little snip you see here just shows this is what it looks like in TIN-TAP when they pull up in TIN-TAP under the summary under business tax. They'll click on additional actions, and then from there it's very simple process. So if someone does come in and tells you they're closing, please tell them, hey, log into TIN-TAP or contact Department of Revenue. If they do have a TIN-TAP account and they know what you're talking about, tell them they just click on additional actions under their business tax account, and it'll walk them right through the process. It's very simple. All right, now we're going to talk about the Business Tax Portal, or the BTP as we're going to refer to it as. So most counties, you're all entering your license applications directly into BIS. I think just about everybody. There may be a few that use the portal from the get-go. Most cities actually are entering their new applications for licenses directly into our portal and then just cashiering it over in their local system. But once you enter that new license application into BIS, their system, BIS system, communicates with our TR3 system, runs a series of verifications and checks, all right, to make sure we don't already have that taxpayer in our system, so on and so forth. And then it's going to attempt to verify that submission. You're probably familiar with this. You either get a red light or a green light, right? It's going to say green, yay, submitted to TDOR. It's going to say, ooh, red, not submitted. And that's when it's not fun, right? But when having issues verifying a submission, we just want to make sure you understand, you can go in and submit it directly into our business tax portal. We're going to walk you through how to do that. Or you can contact our clerk support or BIS's clerk support. But if you're just wanting to get it done, it's having problems submitting it, can you troubleshoot, you can submit it directly through the portal. Of course, you would then have to figure out in BIS, you'd have to cashier it and do all that stuff because our system does not do that part. But some common issues where you're going to get that red not submitted message in BIS. Sometimes there's an issue with the address. Sometimes there's an issue where they're already in our system, maybe as an individual. We get those calls, just reach out to us. I know sometimes there's a tricky one where we're just not quite sure why something is not submitted, and we sometimes have to go a little bit back and forth and work with BIS to figure out what's going on. Again, sometimes it's complicated. There's a situs issue or something like that. But
And Katie, here in just a little while, why don't we get Jonathan and Josh to join us sort of after we get through everything, and then
yeah,
maybe address a couple of those issues, because that's very common. That's something that Deborah's group especially, and Lisette's group to a certain extent, help people with every day. So yeah, we'll
right,
talk about that. Thanks.
right. I know it can be frustrating too. Um, I've visited county clerk offices, and man, getting that red not submitted is like, oh, I just did all this work and I keyed in all this info and it's not working. Very important here to note, you see on the bottom of this slide, if a submission is not verified in BIS or in our business tax portal, just know that we will not get record of that license being issued, which can create problems down the road. You may kind of manually push it through, just get it done to be able to hand a license across the counter to your customer, right? Get it done. just know that if you're not getting that red submitted to TDR message through BIS, we're not getting the info. And that would come into play and become a problem when it comes time for them to get tax clearance to renew. First off, with the business tax portal, you need to gain access. There's a link on our clerk resources page to the form. There's also a link within the business tax portal homepage. That's the very first step. It's important that everyone that's going to access our portal does have their own login and fills this form out. Do not share usernames and passwords. It's kind of a big no-no for audit purposes and otherwise. There is a two-step verification each day when you log in. That's just there's no workaround for that. Once you log in, it's going to send you a very quick, just right away, you'll get a little security code that you put in there. And of course, we've got very sensitive taxpayer data there. So that's just to make sure, since you're accessing it online, that's just a safety net there. When you have an employee that is leaving your office that had access to the business tax portal, it's also important that you remove their access. If it's the same form that you're going to use to gain access, but you just check a different little box. You just check remove access and then send it on to tr3.security@tn.gov. If you have any employees that have left and you didn't go through this process because you didn't know about it or forgot about it, it's not too late now. We're always looking to kind of clean up our system and clean up who has access to it. So if that applies to you at some point in time, in all your spare time, right, you can still remove their access now. You just put their DGD number in there and their name, just click remove access. Okay, now we're going to go we're going to watch a quick video about how to register a new taxpayer in the business tax portal. Again, you're 99.9% of the time you're doing this in BIS, okay? But this just shows you it's going to be a lot of the same information that you're going to see that you're putting in, choosing what their entity type is, their entity ID, so on and so forth. But if you ever did need to issue that license directly through our portal, this little quick video we're going to show you is going to show you how to do that. We're going to watch a couple videos today, and just so you know, they can all be found when you log into your business tax portal in your learning manager. So let's just hope that this works. I practiced switching over and playing a video, but let's see if it works. All right. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Let's see here.
Okay, hey, something really important, guys,
Yes.
on this, and I think most of you know this. If you're using BIS for licenses, you're not going to print the 10 tap license. You're not going to do that whole process that was explained at the end of that. So you don't have to necessarily know how to do that if you're using the BIS system to generate your licenses. Okay, so just know that that's that deal. Okay, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Billy. So yeah, that's the process you'll go through. Again, if you're wanting to enter in a new application directly into our system, if something's going wrong with BIS and you're just wanting to go ahead and get it through there, or not wrong with BIS, but something's not connecting between their system and our system when you're entering it in BIS. This slide, I'm going to kind of scoot through some of these because we want to get done on time. This is something you can save as just some tips when you're searching our system to when to use commas, when to not use commas. That can be kind of confusing there. All right, now we're going to talk about renewing a license. I saw there was a question in there in the chat about this. So when the taxpayer files and pays business tax, we're going to send clearance to the city and county. All right. You have to actually issue that renewed license. Very important to note here, it has to be renewed through the business tax portal if you want the customer to be able to view that license in TINTAP. Just doing your bulk renewal in BIS does not uh, allow them to view that license in TINTAP. You have to go through this process in the business tax portal. And we're going to show you how to do that here in just a minute. As Billy mentioned earlier, failure to file, what happens there, they are going to get what's called a notice of proposed assessment, or NOPA. We send that to them after about 30 days after their return is late. It could go into collections, you hope not, but if they get that NOPA, like Billy said, it's going to have an estimated amount on that. We call it just an estimate. If they just pay that estimate, sometimes they'll get that in the mail and they'll think it's just a bill. It'll say $100. If they do that, that's not going to give them clearance. They have to actually go in and file the return. So sometimes there's confusion there. They might come to you and say, well, I paid what I got in the mail. I got this letter saying that I didn't file, so I paid the $100. A question you might want to ask them there is, did you actually file the return? Because if they didn't file the return, they're not going to get clearance. Another interesting thing that we have found over the past couple of years since we've been in this new system is that if for any reason our system does not show that they were ever issued a license, and that can be for various reasons, if we're not showing a license attached to a particular account in our TR3 system, even if they're filing and paying, it may not be coming through on that clearance. In those situations, we get lots of phone calls from the counties saying, is this taxpayer clear? Is this clear? Are they clear? Sometimes that's why they're not showing up. In that case, if they were not ever issued a license, or at least our system doesn't show that they were, you can go through that process we just showed you to issue a license, and then from that point on, they'll be in the mix. They'll be in the flow. You'll know when they do renew, and you'll get the clearance on them. We're going to watch a quick video again on that process, how to renew a taxpayer in the portal. All right, pretty simple process there. The next slide we're going to show you is some tips on how to filter that list. If you're a pretty large county, or if you haven't gone through to renew your taxpayers through the portal, you're going to see a big long list, and it's going to include minimals. It's going to include delinquents in there. And if you don't filter it, you're going to have to go through and check each one that you want to renew. This is just a way to filter out those minimals and filter out the delinquents. You'll type in minimal equals false and delinquent equals false, and voila, you'll get just the standard licenses that are not delinquent. All right, so changes. When you have a customer that comes into your office or contacts you and they want to make a change of any sort, we want to make sure you understand that any changes that you enter into BIS are not going to be relayed to our system. Our systems speak about that initial license, the initial application that's entered. They're going to talk then, communicate. They're going to communicate back and forth about renewal eligibility, but anything else, they do not. So very important here. If they have a classification change, contact us. Mailing address. So if they're just wanting to change their mailing address, you can, as the clerk, go into our business tax portal and update that. We'll show you how to do that. Or what we would prefer you to do is have them do that on TinTap. It's very simple. Of course, you may want to update it in your BIS system as well, but just so you know, if you update their mailing address in BIS, our system's not going to know about it. So they may miss important letters and such unless they actually go into TinTap and change their mailing address. Or if you want to do it for them, you can do that through our BTP. Location change. If they're staying within the same situs, so let's just say they're moving right next door in the strip mall, you can contact us about that, or they can do that on TinTap, and it's very easy. If they are moving to a different situs, that changes things. They'll need to contact us or close a location and register a new one. Location change, if the different situs, different county, obviously at that point, they're going to need to close out the location that they're closing and then obtain a new license for the new location. For changing contact info like name, email address, phone number, that's another one of those things that you can do in our business tax portal, or they can very easily do on TinTap themselves. TinTap is very user-friendly when it comes to self-service stuff like changing address, stuff like that. Changing from a minimal to a standard license, you'll just issue a new license, right? Changing from a standard down to a minimal, they will have to close, file a return for that standard, where that standard license was, file, pay, and then come to you to obtain that minimal license. List of locations, that's a report within the business tax portal. This is where you'll go to if you want to change an address, change a mailing address, change an email address, phone number, contact name. You'll just click on that list of locations report, type into the search or filter bar any keywords about the business. This is also, it'll bring up the business. It's a way you can quick print one of the TinTap issued licenses. So it's not going to look like obviously your BIS issued business license, but if you just want a quick print for them, that license, it's got the state seal on it. If you know what I'm talking about, this is a good way to quick print a license for them. We'll show you here in a little while how they can print their own. But okay, so we want to tell you a little bit about TinTap. Again, like I said, it's very user-friendly. If you could say one thing, or actually I'm going to say two things, to your customers as you're handing them that license. Number one, let them know they're going to have to be paying business tax and be liable for business tax. They're going to have a business tax account. Number two, tell them to use TinTap. Cannot stress that enough. TinTap does so much. It's kind of like online banking, but for your tax account. You'll see there in the bottom of the screen, action steps. They will need to create a TinTap logon and password. That doesn't happen automatically when they open a tax account. They'll have to actually go in and do that. And then after creating that TinTap logon, then they'll add access to their tax accounts. That's kind of confusing for some people. They think just getting in there to 10 tab, they say, well, I don't see my tax accounts here. There's another little extra step to gain access to the accounts. Send them to this place. This is the best resource for newbies, brand new business owners. You tell them, hey, you need to get on 10 tap. On our website, tn.gov/revenue, if they click on questions or revenue help there are great resources for creating the 10 tap logon, how to file returns, how to gain access to accounts. Very, very, very helpful resources there. This just shows you, in case you've never seen it, what it looks like if you're a taxpayer and you log into your 10 tap account. And in this case, this business, Jim Jones Corp, they have already added access to a couple of accounts: business tax, franchise excise. You can see there out next to the business tax account in the red box. That's where they'll make a payment, view and file returns. Additional actions and licenses, that's where additional actions is where they'll close an account, request a refund, so on and so forth. Licenses, that's where if you are a county that participates in having your licenses generated to 10 tap, which I think almost most do, that's where they can print off their 10 tap license. Under more, within 10 tap, under the more tab, lots of stuff here. Register new account, this is where address maintenance is. They can view all their letters, view their submissions. This is a good, this slide right here. I know some counties and cities have actually, I've sent this to some that print this off and hand it to their customers, because so many customers want to know how to print a license in 10 tap. This will show you how to do that. Like I said, you just click on number one, click on additional licenses. I'm sorry, additional actions and licenses. Number two, they'll click on view licenses, and then there they are, voila, and they just click on it and it'll print. And again,
Now,
just to, yeah,
and this is guys, for the people, the cities and the counties that actually print licenses out there. So I know I got Tammy online from Metro here. Obviously, this doesn't apply to her because
right,
we have a block in the system that prevents that from happening. So they're going
right,
strictly through their own license process. Okay,
that's right.
thanks.
Thanks, Billy. All right, we're going to spend just a couple minutes here before we go into some question and answer time to talk really briefly about the sales tax aspects for county clerks. We've got a great manual for this, a sales tax manual for county clerks for vehicle and boat sales, and a whole webinar dedicated to it, but just going to touch on some basics
Hey,
here.
hey, Katie.
Yeah,
I'm sort of annoying. Agreed? Yes. Okay.
no, you're
So
not. I love your input. I need
I
it.
think I think we might have some people online that might just be here for business tax.
Okay,
So maybe what we would want to do is kind of see if we could
stop.
go ahead and do a few questions on business tax, and maybe ask,
Good idea.
Jonathan and Josh to maybe chime in a little bit from the BIS side here too. The first thing I want to talk about is a real hot topic, and Deborah knows this all too well, and it's this issue about situs. So we have an issue right now to where several of you will be processing new applications, and you'll get a message that says, this just won't go through. The situs is bad or something like that. It's not showing that it's in your county, as an example. Well, clearly it is, so you've got a problem there. So what you have to do is reach out to us. Either send us that application, preferably send us the application by email to revenue.support@tn.gov. That's our email group, and either one of Deborah's folks or one of Lisette's folks will pick that up and process that application pronto for you immediately. We're still trying to figure out why that's happening, and it is been elevated. Believe me, we look for that to be fixed as soon as possible. I think that also it's not possible to fix every single one of them, because a lot of times, businesses will be annexed, and this is mainly for the cities. We see this when the cities call us too. They'll be annexed into the city from the county, and then maybe it's not picked up on or whatever. But we work with y'all on that. So again, like Katie mentioned, if you've got an application that won't submit, you can't ignore it. You've got to actually reach out to us and let us help you with that. Okay. Just don't let it sit there, because it's going to become an issue when they get ready to file next year. They're going to say, I got my license back in October with the county clerk. I don't know why you don't have my information. Well, this is where teamwork makes the dream work here, folks. So that's why we need your help on that. Okay. Um, yeah, so that's the situs issue. And then, of course, on the clearance issue, I think Jonathan and Josh would agree too that we still have some issues that we're trying to work with on the BIS side, to try to get you the best data in the clearance program so that they come through on that and don't have you reach out to us. Although Deborah's bunch, especially, answers calls, all day long, from folks saying, hey, did they pay their 2021? Yes, they did, or no, they didn't, or whatever. You can call us. Feel free to call the clerk line. We are glad to take your phone call all day long. And Deborah's group does a great job of that. Lisette's group also, in the email side of things too, will help you. We will. So you won't have to wait on anything if you just contact us. Okay. Josh and Jonathan, do y'all have any comments that you'd like to make on that? Would appreciate
Uh,
anything you want to say on that.
yes, sir. Thank you for having us here, and we're happy to answer any questions we can. Uh, I've got the subject matter expert Josh here. I'll let him answer any questions y'all may have. I don't want to say the wrong thing and get Josh in trouble. Josh?
As far as that specific side issue, yeah, we still get calls about it as well, and we'll try to help them if we can, because sometimes it's just a small typo in the address, and try to save you guys a phone call, or like you said, just direct them to you guys to get the status resolved on your end. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that may come up as common problems for the clerks.
Great, thank y'all. Really appreciate y'all being here as people, as attendees put questions in here. We may have to call on you BIS experts here. I was going to look back and see. Teresa has a question. When a company has licenses in multiple counties, they can print all licenses except for Sullivan County. Why is this? Teresa, that's a good question. We would have to probably look up the specific one. If we are not showing that might be a case. If they're not seeing a Sullivan County one, maybe it's the situation that I was mentioning earlier, where we're just not showing in our system that a license was ever generated through Sullivan. Maybe it was, and we just didn't get the submission of it. Maybe printed off
Okay.
one locally.
Yeah. And here's a question I've got for Teresa too, and she may or may not know this, but if Teresa or someone in the Sullivan County Clerk's office doesn't go to the business tax portal and actually
Right.
go to the what we call bulk renewal or renew multiple licenses report and actually click off on those and submit those through, they won't show up. So I'm not sure if that's being done or not. I don't know. So that's your first stop, is to check that. After that, if we've got some sort of issue, then holler at us so we can follow up on it for you. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. If you're a county that's noticing that, if you do have us authorized to do a 10 tap license, but you're getting lots of questions about people saying they're not seeing their licenses and 10 tap, the first thing I would do would be to check and verify that your office is actually renewing those licenses through our portal. If you've never done it before, which there may be, maybe you just never didn't know this or just now learning about it, you would go in right now, follow those steps that we showed you on the video, and you're probably going to see a long list there. If you were to go through that process, click, 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 then they would be able to see their license on TinTap. And again, that's assuming that they do have tax clearance, that they did file and pay. I don't know if this question got addressed. I saw one in here from, oh wait, Billy, you did April's question about previous years. Yeah, the way our system reads it, it's not really broken down by year. They're either clear or they're not clear. If they have any issues with tax clearance from previous periods, they're not clear. You've got to be in good standing to be considered to have tax clearance, which means you have filed all returns and have no balance. Let's see here. Guys, help me out as I've been yapping so much. I haven't noticed a lot of chat. I think a lot of the chat questions we're kind of addressing as they looks like as we go.
We did, Katie,
Okay.
and Teresa's going to give me a call on her issue later today,
Okay.
hopefully. So I look forward to your call, Teresa. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Great. Um,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add something that in the last webinar we did, some people were interested on the chat itself because we were providing so much guidance. Just to let you know, when you see the PowerPoint on our website, the chat will not be included. So if you're one of the people like me, you can take screenshots of the chats if you want to keep that information sent in the chat itself.
right.
That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Lisette.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead then and keep putting questions as they come about in your brain into the chat about business tax. But real quick, I'm going to jump through some sales tax stuff and then show you some resources that we've got. Sales tax, basically, you're just going to be dealing with this on the vehicle and boat transactions, right? Simple little flow chart here. Is it subject to sales tax? No, that means maybe it's exempt. The clerk is going to have to provide proof of exemption, i.e. an affidavit, legal document, military orders, etc. Is it subject to sales tax? Yes. Okay. So then your next question is going to be, has it been paid? If yes, you're going to provide proof that it was paid, such as a bill of sale. That's the most common. If no, um, if it was a private party sale or something, that's when you come into play with collecting that tax, right? So what is exempt from sales tax? So sales to non-resident purchasers, a seller purchaser affidavit of exemption for motor vehicles sold for removal from Tennessee is going to be required there. Sales to members of the armed forces, we're going to get into that here in a minute. Other miscellaneous exemptions, agencies of the U.S. government, qualified nonprofits, ag, contract, common or contract carriers, and some business titling transactions. Also, gifts when zero selling price is involved. No sales price due if no sales tax due if the price was zero, right? Uh, military exemptions. This might be helpful to you as just kind of a click through to see if a transaction from a military member is going to be exempt from sales tax. So first thing to ask yourself, is the applicant applying for title and registration either active duty, full-time, stationed in Tennessee on the date of the purchase, and that can be a member of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, or Tennessee National Guard Reserves, or AGR.
Or Space
Or,
Force.
that's right, we got Space Force now. It's crazy. I feel silly even saying it, but it's real. Or is that military member a Tennessee National Guard member or reservist stationed in a current recognized combat zone? I know you can't click on this link right now watching the webinar, but when we send these materials around, that link will take you over to what's currently recognized as the combat zone. In that case, it applies from the date of the order and expires 90 days after release. A little bit more about that military exemption. The application has to be either in the name of the qualifying military member or jointly owned by that military member and one of the following: spouse, parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, child, grandchild, or great-grandchild. Non-qualifying co-owners include siblings, step-parents, and stepchild. I don't really like that part, but I didn't, oops, clicked the spacebar with my belly. But we don't make the laws, right? We just administer them. So those are non-qualifying co-owners. The next question would be, is what they're trying to get an exemption on, does it qualify? Yes, if it's an automobile, truck, motorcycle, off-highway vehicle, mobile homes, house trailers, camper trailers. Does not qualify, leased vehicles, semi-trucks, boats, and trailers. This chart you may find helpful, or hopefully would find helpful, and this will just let you know for that military exemption what is going to be required. You'll see on the left-hand side there the different documents that you might see. You see lots, and these military orders are sometimes not very easy to read, right? When in doubt, you can always send a copy, email us a copy, revenue.support@tn.gov, and we'll take a look at it. But this will just show you if what you're looking at, if that document you're looking at is going to be sufficient to be able to submit along with as to prove that they're exempt. So first little column there is it an order? Does it say order? Is it a loan sufficient, or is additional documentation necessary? So again, not going to read through every line there, but hopefully that will be a helpful resource for you when it comes to what kind of documentation you're looking at to get that military exemption. Talking about the bill of sale and proof of tax paid, what you're going to be looking at for boats and vehicles included in the sales price is the vehicle itself, document fees, processing fees, business tax, any accessory that is already attached to the vehicle and included on the vehicle bill of sale. Manufacturer rebates are included, down payments are included. Not included in the sales price of the vehicle are going to be title and registration fees, extended warranty or service contracts. Those are taxed separately. Roadside assistance is taxed separately. Paint wheel protection plans, wheel and tire protection plans, those are taxed separately. Gap insurance is not subject to tax. Not included in the sales price is going to be trade-in allowance, dealer discounts, or any accessories that are not already installed and that maybe are going to be installed at a later date.
Hey, Katie, let me comment on that real quick.
Sure.
This is an excellent slide right here, because what that's telling you is, about the T&R fees, the title and registration fees, they're never taxable. But this other stuff where it says tax separately, just remember, when people buy vehicles, they're buying a vehicle, right? But you can also buy other stuff when you buy that vehicle. Okay. When you go in and sit in that office and the guy sells you the paint protection plan and the extended warranty and all that kind of stuff like that, you're buying another object. You're buying something else. You're buying the vehicle, sure, but you're also buying other things. The other things are generally subject to tax, not the gap insurance. And of course, when it gets to trade-in allowances and discounts and stuff, those are just reducing the price for which you're paying on the actual automobile, okay, or the vehicle, right? So just keep that in mind. That sometimes when we think about going to a car dealer, we think we're just buying one thing, but that's not true. You could buy one thing, sure, but you could buy seven things, depending on what you get talked into buying down there. Okay. Just saying.
And there's so much, you're going to see all kinds of stuff on a bill of sale. But I think, the important thing here is looking to see what is included when it comes to the sales price of the vehicle. Equally important, both of these slides right here. I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to talk about single article here in a second, but I think that this slide gives you a really good example about how when you're breaking down that bill of sale, how it actually comes into play when it comes to what's going to be due to you. The example we have here, we're using, it's a vehicle sold in Davidson County, so that's 2.25. No sales tax paid at the time of purchase, okay? The vehicle here was $35,000. You got a documentation fee of $300, rebate of $3,500, trade-in allowance of $10,000. So what we're going to do there is look at, we're going to take $35,000 and we're going to add in the documentation fee. We are taking out, we're doing nothing with that rebate. And then we're adding, subtracting that trade-in allowance, okay, which brings us down to the sales price of $25,300. I'll go back to the single article here in a minute, but we're basically going to take that whole 25,300 and tax it at the general state rate, which is 7%, okay? And then because of single article, 1,600 is going to be taxed at the local sales tax rate, and the next 1,600 at the state single article rate. So we got total tax due on that vehicle of $1,851. We've got other items here though, like that we were just talking about. We got an extended warranty for 1,800, roadside assistance for 150, paint protection. Um, Total sales price of items not included in the vehicle sales price. So those are the things we were just talking about, of things that are not included in the vehicle sales price. That's going to be 2,950. So those are not going to be factored in when it comes to single article. Those are taxed separately. So total tax due on those non-vehicle, excuse me, items, you're going to take that amount, which was 2,950, and multiply it by the state plus the local rate. So in this case, the state plus local added up to 9.25. So for those items that are taxable but that were not part of the sales price, a little bit of additional tax is due there, right? $272.88. Um, so what at that point, the total tax due, so the box in the middle there, you're looking at that 1851, which was the tax on the purchase price of the vehicle, plus those non-vehicle items. And the total that's going to be due is going to be $2,043.88. So going back to the slides about what's included. So these are all the things that are going to be included in that price of the vehicle, for which single article is applicable. We haven't talked about that yet, but, and then these are the things that are going to be separately or maybe not taxed at all, but definitely just set aside outside of the sales price of the vehicle.
Hey, Katie, real quick
Sure.
too. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Just
it's
want to
okay.
say that, we put this information on these slides. So I know a lot of you on this call and a lot of people back in your office, you're thinking, okay, well, what about all the other weird things that we see? Oh my goodness. You'll see lots of stuff on these invoices and sales contracts and things like that too. So so basically, if it has to do with the purchase of that vehicle or anything attached to that vehicle during its sale, it's most likely taxable. Okay. And they may call it something weird. They may call it, some kind of different thing. It's probably subject to tax. So, but if you run into any of those, you're welcome to run them by us and we'll give you our opinion on it. But sometimes it's kind of hard to kind of break some of this stuff out.
It
So
is. It's confusing. I mean,
just wanted to throw that out there that it's not like an all-inclusive list, right?
this list right here, though, of what's included in the sales price, Billy, that's pretty set in stone, what's included in the sales price. It's the other stuff that gets confusing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other stuff is
Yeah,
they could call all kinds of different stuff. It's kind of weird, you know.
right, right. This one, now that I'm looking at this, just to provide a good resource, this might be something good to make a little chart out of. You know how much I like my charts, Billy, right? What's taxed separately, what's included in the sales price. Again, but we
There
wouldn't
you go.
even be able to list everything because who knows what they're going to call it. They could call it, I don't know. I can't think of anything clever, but you never know what's going to show up on that bill of sale. Um, but
Hey, Katie, there's a question. Ann Lee has a question. Why does the local tax go up when we separate the extended warranty and the total price? It's because the extended warranty by law is subject to all local tax on every dollar of that. That's a weird part of the law. It's
mhm.
weird. So that's why it's separated in that way because nothing else is really taxed that way in state law. It's very odd, but it's that way, and that's why it's split out.
Um, this slide, just basics on single article, one big item and what's included with the sale of that item. Um, there's a local sales tax limitation for those items. It's called single article. The entire sales price is taxed at that 7% rate. The first 1,600 at the local rate, the next 1,600 at the state single article rate, which is always 2.75, and that's how you're going to come up with that. Going to show you some additional resources here. Hopefully you all already know about the clerk's resource page. I'm going to take you over there to it though, and then also show you a few more resources. Hold on here, web browser. Okay, can y'all see my screen, my web browser now? Hopefully. Okay. So when you're on our homepage, tn.gov/revenue, this is just our main homepage. The first thing I want to show you real quick is all the way at the very bottom, which is for county clerks. If you click on that, business tax resources, this is where I think I saw something in the chat earlier about how do we get that, how do we gain access to the business tax portal. Here's your form right here. All right, the business tax access request form. It's always going to be right here. The business tax license application. One time recently, we came across, I think it was a city somewhere that was using an application for business tax that was like a million years old. Anytime, of course, we would let you know if there's ever any updates. I think the last time they updated this was around the time we switched systems a few years ago, but this is always going to be the current business tax license application. Some other resources here that might be helpful to you um, on that subpage as well. Sales and use tax resources, webinars and tutorials. So this is where we will have the recording of today's training that we're doing along with the PDF of it. So probably a little bit later on this week, we'll post a recording so you can click on that recording if you want to just go back and watch it for any reason. Again, in all your spare time, or you've got new employees, you've got somebody new starting, you're training someone new and want to walk them through this presentation and just have them watch it, part of their training. This is where you'll go for that, and then we'll have a link just like this right here where you can click to download the PDF. So if you want any of the materials, or if you want to print off that page showing people how to print their license in TinTap or any of these charts or whatever, you can click on a link to download the presentation. But you can see here we've got a few other ones that we've already got in here. We're not talking about occupancy tax today, but this occupancy tax webinar that Billy did back a couple years ago is really great. Here's a webinar about sales tax on motor vehicles, stuff about the business tax portal. So good resources there, and then some additional information here as well. Excuse me. Back to our homepage, a few more important resources that I really want to show you. We have some really great tax manuals. If you haven't checked them out, that we've been improving them over the past couple years. From our homepage, if you click on tax resources and scroll down just a little ways under legal resources here on the left-hand side, you'll see, if you scroll down a little ways, tax manuals. I'm going to click there. The business tax manual is amazing. I would recommend to all of you, click on this and don't print it off because we update it. And it's a lot of pages. It's 170 pages. I would say don't print it because we do update it, but save this as a favorite on everyone who works in business tax in your office. Have them save this as a favorite on their browser because it is an exhaustive, great, huge resource about anything and everything business tax related. I, to this day, don't think I've come up, every once in a while we come up with something where we just still have to dive a little bit deeper and into the topic, but pretty much everything you would need to know about business tax is in here. You can click on the subheadings within the table of contents here, or just like with any, you may be aware of this, with any PDF that you're looking at online, you can click Control F and just type in a word like contract, or did I spell that right? And it'll show you here everywhere anything about contractors is listed in this manual. On that note, I will say if contractors is a confusing subject for you, like it's always been for me, I'm going to scroll through this table of contents here. We have a great section on industry specific guidance just for contractors. It's at the end here. Industry specific guidance contractors. This manual is amazing. Again, save it. Earlier when we were talking about exempt services, because I know that's another kind of confusing or can be a confusing topic sometimes, really good information in this manual about exempt services, exempt entities. Use this manual. It is great. I could go on and on about it. Sales tax, for sales tax, we've got two good manuals that I would refer you to. The first is going to be the sales and use tax guidance for county clerks for automobiles and boats. This link right here. You may already know about that. If you don't, another great one to save a bookmark to, save as a bookmark. Lots of information, pretty much everything you would need to know about sales tax guidance for you guys there. There's also great military tax manual here. It's going to get into some other stuff other than what's relevant to you as you're uh, regarding the exemption that they're going to get for vehicles and boats, but another good resource there. And I am going to take you to two more places. We're going to head back up to the home page of tn.gov/revenue. Under taxes, which you can get to from this drop down or by clicking on the tile. This is where there's just good basic information. Let's go over to business tax. This is very basic information where that manual is going to dive into lots of details, scenarios, examples, links over to what the TCA about, the laws, everything. This is just an overview of business tax. If you want to, again, for training purposes, the subheadings over here on the left, you can see this is where you can see all those classifications we were talking about, a detailed listing of what's in each classification. Just a great resource to go just over to the tax page. Frequently asked questions and articles, help articles, especially regarding TINTAP. I like to point people over to questions here. Revenue help is what it's called. Again, especially for TINTAP stuff, and if you get questions from your customers about issues with TINTAP, send them here. Obviously, you can send them to us directly, but this is a great resource for them. Tons of articles about everything from logging in to registering, payments, tax returns. You can see here under TINTAP login, just creating the username, information needed, password requirements. You can see there's a link here to, there's 20 articles just about that. So great resource there. In addition to TINTAP, you can see tax specific information, lots of good stuff on revenue help there. One more place, and then I'll look back over at the chat here in a second, but just want to call to your attention some taxpayer education stuff. And we could really use y'all's help in promoting some of these resources that we have available to the business owners out here in our state and the taxpayers. So under taxpayer education, we do a monthly free tax webinar. They can click on it right here. This month, we're doing a state single article. Next month is going to be a really great one. You can see here in November, it's always the last Tuesday of the month. Our webinar is going to be on e-commerce. That should be a really good one. All the ones we've done so far are down here in a webinar video library. So great resource there. And then finally, something I'm very excited about is a new business landing page that we've got. I'm back to our homepage here, tn.gov/revenue, scroll down just a little bit for businesses, and then for new businesses. Please help us tell people about this. This is literally so brand new. I think it just launched 2 weeks ago, about a week and a half ago. This is a great resource for any new business. You can see here the tiles you can click on: setting up a business, getting your licenses and permits, establishing your tax accounts. Is the business exempt? How to register for tax accounts, filing and due dates. You can see here, click here to download a printable worksheet to work through, just to make sure they're dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's, because it can be very, very confusing if you're a new business. They're not just dealing with, all the setting up their business and what they're going to sell and how they're going to how they're going to finance it all. But all this tax stuff is so confusing, right? It's not just with us. It's also, they might have to go to the Secretary of State. They may have to go over to the Department of Labor and Labor and Workforce if they're going to have employees and need unemployment insurance. All that is so much, and we've got some great resources about some, at least the tax stuff that they're going to have to do, and some other stuff as well. So help us promote that. It'll be a win-win because our taxpayers, the more help they can get, the better. So let's see here. Billy, Deborah, Lisette, Dan, am I missing anything big with resources for them, for clerks and or taxpayers?
No, you're not.
Okay.
I think we hit everything on there, Katie, and you did a great job in going through all this information. It's a lot, y'all. It's a
It
ton, and we
is.
we could sit here all day long and talk about sales tax and business tax and everything, but I don't think you have enough time to do that. I don't think we do
Right?
either right now. But
Right.
the good news is that we've shared with you our phone numbers, our email. Um, Again, just to kind of brag on Deborah's group and Lisette's group, um, along with Katie too. Everybody does a great job in trying to be accessible, and several of you commented on that. One of the better things in state government here at the Department of Revenue is when you need help, if you're a taxpayer or you're a clerk or whoever, you're going to be able to find it. Okay. And barring April 15th and all the goofiness that goes along with that, uh, you know, we answer the phone. We get these emails answered too. So don't be afraid to reach out to us. If you think your question is too dumb, don't feel that way because it's not. I promise you, we've asked ourselves questions all day long and we forget a lot of stuff. And all that stuff at different times too. And we have to go back and look up things in the business tax manual and other places too. So again, we thank you as clerks for what you do as well. We also thank our folks at BIS for their continued support of the clerks and us as well. We know there's some challenges still out there, and we want to solve those problems. So we'll continue to work towards doing that as well. So
For
that's
sure.
that's what I wanted to say there too. Katie, is there anything else you wanted to bring up, or any of the other folks from Revenue that might be on the line?
Katie, I was just wanted to say, oh yeah, great. If anybody has a lead, they want to report a business. So please note the email address on the slide, discovery.unit@tn.gov. This will be the best way to start, and submit the paperwork if you see it necessary.
Yeah, we definitely get that question a lot if about where to send audit leads. Yes, Lisette, thank you for pointing that one out. Discovery.unit@tn.gov. They'll need anything you can send along with that audit lead paperwork. Go ahead and send it to them. Here's the audit division's number if you want to follow up. Um, Kind of skipping around on this slide here a little bit, but again, we didn't go over anything occupancy tax related, as you all might be aware. Most hotels, motels, everyone that just maybe rents out has a short-term rental that they rent out on their own, they're going to pay occupancy tax directly to you if they use a short-term rental marketplace like Airbnb or VRBO. As of 2021, now those short-term rental marketplaces are remitting occupancy tax directly to us, and then we forward it over to you guys. So any questions about that when it comes to payments for occupancy tax, or if you don't yet have occupancy tax and you're wanting to set it up for your jurisdiction? I think most counties already do. I'm not 100% sure on that though. But here's an email address if you've got questions about payments regarding that, revenue.financialcontrol@tn.gov. Um, I've got a link here to those tax manuals. Again, let us know if you're ever having to close for some reason unexpectedly. We just love a little shout out. Of course, all of our closures, our planned closures, are on tn.gov under there's a link there to all state government office closures, which are your regular closures, holidays and such. But anytime you've got to close, whether you're having an issue, office floods, God forbid, anything bad happens, just let us know. We like to know about that. I don't think we really kind of breezed through some stuff here at the end. Um, I'll
Katie, there's a
go.
question in chat you might want to look at from Christy. The last one talks about motor carrier and IRP still doing title work through 10 tap. Don't know that we do title work through 10 tap. I know that taxpayers have access to IRP and things like that in 10 tap.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been gone from vehicle services for several years now. Ever since we moved into the new system, actually, I've been gone from there. So Christy, unfortunately, I'm not very knowledgeable about motor carrier and IRP. I know that those tax types are in TR3, but whether they do their title work and whether that stuff's going through TINTAP, I'm sorry to say I don't
Yeah,
know
they
the
you
answer
probably
to
just want
that.
to reach out to motor carrier
Yeah,
and talk to one of those folks over there and get the true answer on what you're trying to find out on that, Christy. Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
we're one big department, Department of Revenue, but vehicle services and motor carrier, we kind of stay separate when it comes to the topics there. So reach out to them. I think that covers all of our topics today. Again, like Billy mentioned in the beginning, if you want to recommend this to anyone else, we're doing the same thing tomorrow. I got to look and remind myself of the exact time because I'm on Eastern time, and I always got to make sure I'm clear about this. The one tomorrow is going to be in the afternoon, and it's at 1 o'clock Central. So if you want to forward anybody, send anybody our way for attending this same thing tomorrow, please do so. Again, we'll have a video of this and the PDF out on our website, so check back for that, and we'll probably send word of that through Pam to forward that along to all of the county offices. Thank you, April, for your comments. Thank you. We will see you soon. Please reach out to us. I'm going to end things on this last slide here, which has our contact information. Hopefully, you're all pretty aware of that clerk line and use that. Again, you will get in trouble from Billy Trout personally if you give that number out to any taxpayers,
That's
right?
exactly right. It's 100%
He'll
correct.
come and get you.
No, we're not going to do that, folks. We're going to keep that line for you so that you ring right into Deborah and her staff, and they help you so well each and every day. So again,
One more thing I want to make note of real quick. We are starting to have in-office days at some of our regional offices. I got a call the other day from a county who had a customer that they just really needed some help and they didn't want to do it online. So they were going to be going into one of our regional offices. I'm going to share my screen, my web browser again real quick to show you. On our website, if you scroll down to the very bottom of tn.gov/revenue and go to contact us, you can see our regional office locations right here on the left hand side. It says office locations. We also have now, this is new since we've started opening back up, you can request an appointment with taxpayer services. So if you've got a customer that just wants some sit down help, like in the old days pre-COVID, and wants to visit one of our offices, they can make an appointment here. But clicking on office locations here, you can see where the different offices are located. Again, I would recommend if you're going to refer anyone to a regional office to call the phone number to find out what that regional office's office hours are. I know here I'm located in Chattanooga. I believe our office here in Chattanooga is open on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. Maybe as we get a little further into this kind of soft opening of our regional offices and our downtown Nashville office, we'll put more information out here about that. But just so you know, they are opening back up, and you can refer your customers if they need specific help from us about their tax
Mr.
return.
Big Mouth wants to say something else. That's me.
Go for it, Mr. Big Mouth.
So, yes, what Katie said is right. But what we want to do is we want to use that request an appointment feature first. And the reason we want to do that is because we found out over the last couple of years that we can solve a pile of problems
Yes.
online, by phone, stuff like that. And we haven't been open for 2 years. So we find out that a whole lot of people don't really need to go and
Hmm.
spend that gas money and be inconvenienced. And like in downtown Nashville, paying to park, It's ridiculous. So don't do that, you know. But if you want to refer them to this sign up feature, that's great because somebody will get back with them very quickly. We'll call them. We'll see if we can figure it out. If not, we'll say, okay, well, come on in. Then what time do you want to come in? You want to come in at 9 in the morning? Okay, cool. We'll be glad to start, talk to you.
That's right.
That way they can be confident that they're going to be able to talk to somebody as well. Okay. So that's the best way to do it. Or call the office, bare minimum, call the office and see what day it's open. Correct.
So just to show y'all how I got there again, went to tn.gov/revenue, scrolled down to the footer, and under contact us, then on the left-hand side, the subtopics here, request an appointment with taxpayer services is how I got there. So I think that is enough yapping. I hope that you learned something today. Please reach out to us if you have any other questions or something comes to you later. Reach out to us, and we hope to see you soon. There's a quick little survey, real quick little survey when you're leaving. I think I'm put just one question on there. But any feedback that you've got for us would be great. If there's any trainings on specific topics that you'd like to see in the future, these webinar, these virtual webinars, virtual trainings are pretty easy for us to set up. So if there's anything you specifically have a request for, you want more training on, let us know, and you can do that. There's a little area on the when you sign out of this where you can put some type in some feedback or specific stuff like that. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks again. Enjoy this cool weather. Make a fire if you've got a fireplace, and we'll see you soon. Thanks
Have a good
everyone for
day,
joining
everybody.
us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for attending.
Thanks y'all. Thanks Lisette.
You're welcome, Katie. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.